This happened when I was 18, on a road trip from my hometown to my new college. I had all my stuff packed into the trunk and back seat of my cheap SUV. It was my first long road trip alone, and my first time being away from my family for a long time, so I was pretty nervous. The directions said the trip was 600 miles, which I split into 2 days of driving. The maps estimated I'd reach the hotel by 11 p.m., but with possible traffic, gas stops, and food breaks, I knew I'd likely get there much later. By 7 p.m., the sun had set and most of the cars were gone. Every once in a while, a car would pass by, and I'd see its headlights fade out in front of me. For most of the drive, it was just me, making me really tired and bored. Around 10, I decided to stop at the next gas station before the final stretch of the drive. About 10 minutes later, I exited the road and entered a gas station. It was just a gas station with a few pumps and a tiny convenience store, no other cars on the road or in the lot, and no lights from nearby houses or buildings. I pulled up to a pump and got out to fill my tank. As I looked around, a guy suddenly walked up to me, making me jump. He looked much older, probably in his 50s, and honestly looked homeless. Being approached out here was unexpected, and his short smile didn't make me feel any more comfortable. "Hi, do you need something?" I asked, hoping he wouldn't come closer. The man stopped a few feet from my car, looked around cautiously, then said, "Take the exit back onto the highway." I looked at him, confused. He pointed behind me at the exit I came from and repeated, "Take the exit back onto the highway." After a second, I said, "Okay," and the man walked off, but I was still confused. The exit he wanted me to take again was a one-way road, so he wanted me to drive on the wrong side of the road and do a U-turn back onto the highway. It didn't make sense. I looked at the entrance road, the obvious one I was supposed to take, and there were no signs of construction or anything blocking it. It just looked like an empty ramp back onto the highway. I put the pump back and got in my car, glancing at the man who was now sitting against the side of the convenience store. The more I thought about it, the more crazy the man seemed, just sitting out here saying nonsense. I thought maybe this was some kind of trap, so I trusted my instinct and drove toward the entrance to the highway. As I merged onto it, I realized almost all the streetlights were out. I slowed down, thinking maybe this was a construction zone. I kept my eyes on the road directly ahead, making sure to be cautious, but as I made my way through the unlit road, I saw a brief outline of a figure to my left before a pickup truck came out of nowhere and stopped right in front of my car. 4 men jumped out of the truck, holding metal bats, machetes, and knives. They had emotionless gazes like they felt nothing. I quickly started backing up as they got just a few feet away from my windows. Once I got far enough back, I saw dozens of people coming out of the shadows off the side of the road. A few even tried chasing my car as I frantically reversed out of there. As soon as I could, I turned around and sped off. I called 911 once I felt safe, but for some reason, I never got a call back or an update, almost like they didn't even check on it. Ironically, it was the creepy old guy at the gas station who tried to prevent me from getting caught up in that mess, or at least that's what I assume he was doing. Either way, I was incredibly lucky to get out of that alive, as I have no idea what that was, or what they were all planning to do. It was a typical Friday after my college classes, and I was out doing DoorDash for the night. This was my routine to earn extra money for living expenses on campus. The evening started off well with plenty of orders, but after the big dinner rush, things slowed down. The remaining orders were low-paying and hardly worth the effort. Then, just when I was about to call it a night, a decent order came through. It was 8 miles away, but the payout made it worthwhile, unlike many others I had seen that night. I accepted the order and quickly grabbed the bag from the restaurant, then jumped into my car and started driving. According to the map, it would take about 30 minutes, which was longer than most of my deliveries. As I drove, I noticed most houses were closer to campus. Beyond 15 or 20 minutes, it was just fields of crops and open space. The last 10 minutes of the drive were on an empty road surrounded by farms until I reached the house. A dirt driveway led through a large field to a small house nestled far back. Driving through the field felt eerie. Despite not being easily spooked, something about it felt unsettling. As I got farther from the road, the only sound was the rumble of my car on the dirt. I parked in front, prepared the bag, and left my car running as I approached. The night was silent, illuminated only by the porch light of the dark house. I walked through overgrown grass to the porch, knocked on the door, and waited. Looking back, my car sat in the dark, surrounded by pitch-black fields. Moments passed, and I knocked again, but there was no response, not even a sound from inside. The situation started to feel odd. No lights in the windows, the house looked deserted up close. The only sign it wasn't abandoned was the porch light on a cheap solar battery. It automatically charged during the day and turned on at night, so no one needed to switch it on manually. Just as I was piecing this together, I heard a rumble behind me. I turned to see a car driving down the dirt path toward my car. I stood, watching headlights until a man stepped out. I called out from the porch, asking if he was the order recipient, but he didn't respond. He stood by his car silently. Adrenaline surged as I realized the gravity of the situation. The silent night amplified my isolation, stuck between an empty house and a stranger. Instinct took over. I dropped the bag and sprinted off the porch, running behind the house into tall grass. Glancing back, I saw the man following. I kept running, the grass thickening, obscuring my direction. Eventually, I reached someone else's yard where I could call for help. The police arrived, but the man and my car were gone. Strangely, the food bag remained untouched on the porch. It was clear the man had intentions beyond robbery, something far more sinister. Delivering freight across the country's vast stretches from East Coast to West Coast was routine after nearly 2 decades behind the wheel. The familiar roads and truck stops had become second nature to me. However, one dark and overcast night, everything changed on a desolate highway. It was nearing midnight, and I was cruising through miles of open fields and occasional farmhouses. The isolation weighed heavily under the moonless sky. Approaching an old rest stop I'd visited countless times, I decided to take a break and stretch my legs. The place seemed more deserted than usual, with dim lights and no other vehicles in sight, except my own truck. Parking and stepping out, I headed towards a vending machine for a soda. As I inserted coins, a soft whisper caught my attention. I turned, but saw no one nearby. Dismissing it as fatigue or the wind, I retrieved my drink and was about to return to my truck when the whisper came again, clearer this time. It seemed to emanate from the building. Curiosity led me towards the small, run-down structure. Each step on the gravel echoed in the silence. Near the building, a faint light seeped through a bathroom window, and the door was slightly ajar. The whispering persisted, a man's voice repeating an indecipherable phrase urgently. Pushing the door open gently, I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" The whispering abruptly ceased, leaving only an eerie silence. A chill ran down my spine as I hesitated, feeling a sense of unease. Suddenly, a rustling sound behind me made me whirl around. A shadowy figure stood just outside the light's reach. I couldn't discern their features, but I felt their eyes on me. Slowly retreating, I kept my gaze fixed on the figure until I reached my truck. With mounting panic, I locked the doors and sped away, not daring to look back until I was far down the road. Glancing in the rearview mirror, the rest stop had shrunk to a distant speck, and the figure was nowhere in sight. I drove for hours until reaching another truck stop, where I parked and tried to make sense of the unsettling encounter. To this day, I'm haunted by the mystery of that night. Was it a lost soul seeking help, or something more sinister lurking in the darkness? I never returned to that rest stop, always feeling a chill remembering the whisper that pierced the night.